If you have ADHD and rarely talk about money with your partner, it's because money conversations don't just bring numbers into the room. They bring pressure, exposure, the fear of being misunderstood, and they also ask your brain for incredible cognitive effort. Today, we're talking about why money hits differently in relationships when ADHD is part of the picture, why that doesn't mean anything's wrong with your relationship, and how to start those convos in an ADHD-friendly way. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for flying with us. Have a great day. 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Phenomenally ADHD. I'm your host, Zarina, ADHD and money coach, unapologetic Gen X ADHDer, and someone who used to not particularly enjoy having conversations about money with my partner. If you struggle with knowing how to start those convos, keep them going, or have them not derail, this episode is for you. Never did I ever thought talking about money would be something I would enjoy, let alone having money conversations with my husband. Like most ADHDers, I used to be great at avoiding anything that had to do with money until I couldn't tolerate the shame, guilt, and financial chaos anymore. Things are not where I wished they'd be, but I'm still learning, still improving, and that includes having money talks with my husband. We've scratched the surface when it comes to money, and we ought to have those deeper, more challenging conversations. Not that we didn't get there, but we didn't get there to the depth I wish we would have. And here's the most difficult thing to face and admit for me. The main reason why we are not as financially free as a couple as I wished we were is because of past choices and decisions I made. The biggest one being refinancing the mortgage on the house twice. Our house should be close to being paid off by now, but it's not. And it stirs a lot of emotions, even knowing that he's okay with it. Another thing that I wish I'd done differently is hiding investments I made in my business, not realizing how unfair it was or the impact it had on our financial situation as a couple. I didn't want him to question my decisions, be held accountable, or have to justify myself. I am well aware that had I made smarter moves in the past, we'd be elsewhere financially. I also know that a lot of it was driven by my money story and how I felt about money. The interesting part is that secrecy and not wanting to get caught in the need for approval are two of my first sacred money archetype challenges, the maverick. That's why knowing your archetypes is extremely valuable as they provide information that really help you understand your dynamics with money. So if this is close to how you feel as a Gen X woman with ADHD, not being where you hoped you'd be, feeling behind or completely off track, I totally get it. The thing is, dwelling on the past isn't going to change how I feel about the situation. What I can't do, though, is plan having the must-have money conversations in relationships, which are dreams and aspirations, patterns and discomforts, and numbers and obligations. And I'm going to share how I made these conversations happen in a very smooth and comfortable, casual way. The goal isn't to have all three at once. That's executive function overload waiting to happen. The goal is to give you simple prompts to initiate at least one conversation really safely. Ready to understand why money conversations derail even when love is solid and how to begin one without apprehension? Here's the reframe I want you to hold as we go through this. Money conversations, when one or both partners have ADHD, brings misunderstandings, disagreements, or conflicts because emotional regulation impacts couples in many ways, not necessarily because there's something wrong in the relationship. The other thing is that not feeling confident to talk about money has more to do with your relationship with money than anything else. It can also be influenced by your financial situation. In the 25 years my husband and I have been together, we had, like I said, few deep money conversations, mainly because of my lack of confidence from believing I didn't have the ability to learn the basic money management skills, let alone be good at it. Things started to shift when I came to the realization that nothing would change if I continued ignoring my personal finances, and I did that by getting curious and wanting to learn, which are two great and amazing ADHD skills or talents. So the more I learned, the better I became. And I was able to build the confidence to finally bring the topic up for discussion, even if we'd only skimmed over it before. For me, it was huge. So my goal wasn't to dive deep necessarily, even if it's my profound desire, but just getting the conversation going was like, okay, we can do this. Did we have the same perspective about money? No, we didn't. Did we agree on certain aspects and disagree on others? Totally. But it allowed us to see that we had a lot in common. Even though he's a boomer and I'm a Gen X, two generations that have a very different perspective on money. If something has already shifted for you or given you a new way of looking at money conversations with your partner, share it in the comments. I always enjoy reading what resonates for you. Before we dive in, there's something important to name about ADHD brains, money, and love. For a lot of ADHDers, relationships come with something that doesn't show up in people that don't, and that's rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria. A sense or an intense emotional pain and sensitivity to criticism, rejection, or failure. That alone can be the reason why you dislike talking about money with your partner or avoid it altogether. If your partner doesn't bring up money, you don't. And if they do, you feel tense, exposed, or defensive. And depending on your money archetypes, many factors come into play when it comes to having deeper conversations about money. One dynamic I've noticed with my husband is that if I don't bring up money, he sure as hell doesn't either. We've had great discussions about dreams, aspirations, and also with obligations, but not so much in-depth talks about our goals, priorities, spending, or debt until recently. And I was the one who brought it up, and I'll tell you how I did that when we get to conversation number 2. Also, from an ADHD standpoint, money conversations ask for a lot of executive function effort and regulation. That's something incredibly important because it helps in understanding why money conversations are far more difficult and demanding when ADHD is in the mix. Money comes with a lot of baggage, history, expectations, and fear. For ADHD brains, the baggage tends to arrive stacked on top of each other. Talking about money brings the fear of being judged, criticized, and misunderstood. We also don't want to be a disappointment for our partner. At least it was the case for me. And when rejection sensitivity is part of the picture, money conversations can feel emotionally loud before a single word is even said. If you find yourself avoiding, delaying, getting defensive, or staying quiet around money, know this. Your brain is making tremendous effort to regulate emotions and feelings, structure thoughts, and express them with as much clarity as possible, which is not always easy for us. Money stirs so much. Identity, worth, competence, independence. And with ADHD, it happens faster than we can name it, and we don't always see how deeply it's shaping our reactions. We'll get to the must-have heart-to-heart conversations and how you can initiate them with confidence in a moment. But before we do, keep this in mind. Notice what tends to show up in your body when money is at the heart of a conversation. Look for physical signs, tension, tightness, shallow breaths, agitation. Also notice the feelings and emotions that come up. Just noticing, not trying to solve anything, just acknowledging what's there. All right, so let's talk about the money conversations that tend to be ignored and how to start them in a way that works for your ADHD brain. If you wonder why talking about money with your partner matters, it's because it touches security, freedom, identity, values, and dreams. Opening up about money deepens trust. It brings values and dreams into the relationship, and it strengthens connection. The thing is, talking about goals and priorities, spending and habits, debt and obligations, the three main heart-to-hearts we want to have, well, all those conversations require executive functions that demand a lot of effort for an ADHD brain. An effective workaround is to rename the conversation. So instead of talking about goals and priorities, we are going to talk about dreams and aspirations. And you'll see that the other two conversations I've also renamed so that the ADHD brain doesn't completely shut down. So sharing dreams and aspirations as individuals and as a couple is the first conversation to have because it's the easiest one to start. Think of it as the preliminaries where you are building the bridge toward the more difficult conversations. I remember something my husband said as we were having this talk, that we didn't have the money to bring our dreams and aspirations to life. So I really had to remind him that the focus of the conversation wasn't about whether or not we had the money or whether or not we had to make decisions. This conversation is really about getting curious about what the other person wants, why it matters to them, and what their values are when it comes to money. You can start by saying, this isn't about putting pressure or finding all the answers. I just want to understand what's important for you and what you want to work towards. Then ask, when you imagine a fulfilling life, what does it look like for you? What are the most exciting things you like spending money on? What do you hope money makes possible in the next few years? You may have only part of the answer or no answer at all, but that's okay. These questions are meant to spark reflection, not finding the how-to. Also, remember that this preliminary conversation serves as the bridge you build to make the other ones a little less difficult. However, it's not because talking about dreams and aspirations is easier that it can't be challenging if you have ADHD. Why? Because on the surface, we're just talking about the future. Underneath, the partner with ADHD may wonder, do you believe I am actually capable of bringing our vision to life? That's why you want to stay curious and focus on exploration. The second conversation you want to have with your partner is money patterns and discomfort. And this one can be where it goes sideways because several things are going to influence your reaction: emotional regulation, rejection sensitivity, beliefs, as well as your money story. You could feel misunderstood because your partner doesn't fully get what it's like to live with ADHD. This is something I see in the clients I work with. Being misunderstood brings a lot of frustration when you're making huge efforts the other one barely sees. They might not understand why you can't stop yourself from spending impulsively because for them, it's not that hard. Knowing how your brain works gives you leverage to explain what's going on. It's also a great conversation starter as you can show how ADHD executive function challenges impact money management in a way it doesn't for someone that doesn't have ADHD. You can start by saying, I know understanding how hard money management is for me and systems that work for you don't work for me can be difficult. It's not because your systems are not good, it's because my brain's wired differently. Then ask, what's the first memory you have about money? What feels uncomfortable or heavy for you when it comes to finances? And when you think of spending, what makes it hard to separate what's required from what's desired? Personally, here's how I do it. I usually bring up the desire to have the most difficult conversation about money when I know my husband is relaxed. Think on a Saturday or Sunday morning while we're having coffee. And recently I did that and I told him that I would like us to look at increasing our weekly payment on the house. And he said he'd like us to look at paying off that first. And I thought, okay, yeah, that's interesting. We can look at that. Of course, it makes sense. We didn't have the conversation. We agreed on taking time to see where we were and discuss where we wanted to go from there. I told him my goal was to clear off credit card and line of credit debt within the next 2 years. So now we know what the conversation is going to be about. And that brings relief. It brings, for me, it brings a little bit of enthusiasm because I know that my husband is open, and I'm actually going to make sure, because remember, even if I do bring the conversation, he's not the one who's going to come back and say, hey, when are we having this conversation we mentioned a few days or a few weeks ago? So I'll need to make sure that I come back to him and say, hey, when can we sit and have this conversation that we talked about? So that's something that makes it a lot easier. And it also helps to drop the apprehension of having that conversation. So now we know what we are going to talk about, but I also know that there is something that is going to show something from the past I'm not really proud of. It's not that much of an issue, but I know that when I look at the numbers and he sees them, it's going to be linked to past purchases that I made without consulting him, because I wasn't that good at setting apart needs and wants, or what I like to call require and desire. I used to have such a love-hate relationship with money. I mean, a really strong love-hate relationship with money, where I didn't care if I maxed my credit card, especially for something I love spending on, which is traveling. The moment a purchase would get questioned, I'd become defensive. What I'm also conscious of now that I know who my money archetypes are is that many decisions came from my first archetype, who can take financial risks at the detriment of financial security. So being aware of that challenge has allowed me to stop the hemorrhage, stop accumulating debt, and focus on creating financial security. Depending on what's triggered in this conversation, it can become a little tense. And I'll share a quick and effective reset exercise for you to try when that happens in a few minutes. But what you want to be paying attention to when having this conversation is when my spending patterns are questions. Do I hear curiosity or criticism? For many ADHDers, spending isn't about the item purchased or lack of self-control. It's about changing how the moment feels. And if you want more clarity on your money patterns, I've linked the free ADHD and money questionnaire in the episode's description. Completing the quiz means you are already doing something significant, taking action, which beats avoidance. All you have to do is click the link and the quiz is yours for free. And it can definitely help with the third important conversation to have with your partner, which is numbers and obligations. This is definitely the conversation most couples delay because it feels exposing. This is where numbers become visible, where obligations get named, where assumptions get tested. And yes, this is often where avoidance costs the most. It's where you might feel guilt and shame weighing a little heavier on your shoulders because you don't have any other choice than face the problem or the situation and address it. But even if it feels scary, even if it feels uncomfortable, what I've noticed every time I pushed through it is the sense of relief, pride, and just safety that you get on the other side. And as in conversation number 2, There's bound to be quite a lot of triggers once you start talking about numbers and obligations. Before you start, you can say something like, "This could stir up my biggest fears and apprehensions. So I might need to pause to regulate my emotions so I don't shut down." Then ask, can we look at our current financial reality together without trying to fix anything yet? What numbers do we each already know, and which ones feel fuzzy? Are there any financial responsibilities either of us feels alone in carrying? What would feeling on the same team financially look like? What I've noticed from looking, knowing, and discussing numbers and obligations with my husband is that it helped me go from feeling insecure to having a strong sense of security. And that's really something I didn't expect to happen. It's also knowing that I'm not the only one taking care of our finances, because yes, I'm the one that takes care of that, which I never thought I'd do considering how ADHD makes it harder. Even if I'm still in charge and I'm still the one making the conversation happen, we both know what the numbers are. And we're working as a team toward our dreams and aspirations. When this topic comes up, ask yourself, do I feel open or defensive? Do I feel collaborative or avoidant? Just noticing that can soften the edge. Now, here's something I wish more couples understood, especially when ADHD is involved. Money conversations are hard because of the emotional load underneath it. If you notice tension showing up, here's a short reset you can try. The 10-minute bridge reset is designed to bring the focus back to dreams and aspirations, take pressure off, and help you decide what comes next. First, ask each other on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being low and 5 being high, how much mental energy do you have for this right now? If both of you are at least a 3, set a 5-minute timer each. And then complete this sentence, giving as much details as possible. And of course, putting all 5 senses into your answer without censoring yourself or limiting yourself because you think it's not possible. So here's the sentence you are going to complete. If money supported the life I want, it would help me feel, and then you answer. No numbers, no planning, just meaning. That's how you lower the load before raising the stakes. And if this feels hard to do on your own, that's not because you're not good, and that's not failure either. It just means this pattern has been running for a long time. If this episode is landing in a way that makes you realize that you may be ready to take it to the next step, or is making you a little bit curious about what working with your brain could look like, Unlock Your Financial DNA is the space where we explore how your top money archetypes shape motivation, identify where ADHD gets in the way, and get creative and design money systems that match your unique wiring. You can find out more by clicking the link in the episode's description. When navigating these conversations feels safe, there's less defensiveness, less secrecy, more curiosity, more team work. And for the partner who lives with ADHD, better access to executive function, less emotional fluctuation. When safety increases, regulation stabilizes. When regulation stabilizes, problem solving becomes possible. Not perfect, just less threatening. Here's what I want you to take from this. Money conversations don't fail because you're bad with money. They don't fail because your relationship is flawed. They feel intense because ADHD activates identity and rejection faster than most people realize. Before you get into one of those conversations, here's something you can reflect on. What would money conversations look like if they felt empowering? Let me know what money heart-to-hearts you'll try having with your partner in the comments. I love reading what you share. And if you know an ADHDer who can benefit from this conversation, please share it with them and make sure to follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep rocking that badass, phenomenal ADHD brilliance, sending lots of love your way, and I'll catch you in the next episode.